meeting. Joining us now, fresh from his big town hall meeting, which I couldn't get a soundbite on today, any place, Congressman 7th District, Dave Brat. Congressman, good to have you with us.
Hey, John, great to be on. Thanks for having me.
All right, 2 times in 1 week, all right? It's pretty neat. So you get all this criticism about not having a town hall meeting, blah, blah, blah. We already went over that Monday. You had your town hall meeting last night. Tell our audience what happened.
Well, it went great in some respects. I mean, it's most of the folks were constituents, and I want to make that real clear to people. Some of it is organized folks from the Indivisible crowd that is 15 million downloads of that already. And I brought that up, and a lot of the people in the back applauded and said that, showed their members of that. And so we had a good time, but the crowd wouldn't let me answer any questions, right? So they say they want me to show up, and it was largely divided on kind of Trump issues, right? All this energy. I've had 500 meetings with constituents over 2 years, nothing like this, right? So Trump wins, and all of a sudden there's this false narrative about the media they plant on the left blogs. Where's Dave? And it's like, you got to be joking, right? So you show up. So I plan a town hall, and you show up, and then the press complains, well, you're having it in the wrong county. Well, these are 3 new counties I have, right? I've got 3 great new counties. So we were in Nottoway last night, and I got a million Powhatan. And, of course, that's where you go to meet your newest people, right? And have a town hall. So the press just makes up the next narrative. And then they say, why did you have it in this room? Well, because the high school was booked for a basketball. And it just goes right down. So the press questions are just, it's just gotcha politics. The room, I gave my best answers to everything. And people say, you're not representing me. And I think that's the basic takeaway for the night is it's just basically there are a lot of folks who are just very upset on the outcome of the election. And so now I say I ran on these 6 Republican principles, free markets, equal treatment under the law for all people, fiscal responsibility, Constitution, strong defense, faith in God, essential for moral fabric, etc. And I go through all the principles in my book, and all the principles I stand in, and then people say, well, you're not representing me. And I said, well, and I was honest. I said, look, you can disagree with me, but I ran on these. I have a 100% voting score on these. And I kept my word. I'm one of the few politicians who, I went and voted exactly like I told you I was going to vote. And so there's kind of and then the press feeds on that, right? But that's basically, they said, do you believe in climate change? And I said, of course I do. The climate changes all the time. And the press prints that one, they thought that was a funny line. Then I said, I got a PhD in science. I believe in science. You show me the data, and they don't print that. And so they pressed the Washington Post today, Jenna Portnoy. That it is total fake news. So you can go through the whole. It's talking. We'll go take a look at it. It's just a total construction of complaints from beginning to end. No analysis of the complaints. No analysis of policy. No nothing. It's just fake news and a Democrat talking point sheet. On the other hand, Politico, who usually is a little more left and hits me pretty hard, did a very fair piece on what happened. So go take a look at Politico if you want to, and see the contrast, and then go watch the video yourself, and you'll see the truth. That's what happened, right? So go watch the video. We'll post that on the official side today. And so just kind of, I tried to keep it all at the policy level. It's very hard to do that. But the main points I always make on the fiscal side, the spending's out of control, the debt, the unfunded liabilities. I'm fighting for your kids, because they're not going to have anything the way things are going, and getting the economy growing. The press doesn't pick up one word of it, right? Just kind of leftist talking points, and that's the press coverage you'll read versus go watch the actual video. You'll see what I said, and I had a good time with it. The people were on the edge of shutting the thing down, but we maintained it, so we all had a good time.
So, Congressman Dave Brat, when you say people are on the edge of shutting it down, just give me an example of what you meant when you were up there. Did you feel the disruption was getting to the point of no return? Just kind of describe that.
Yeah, we would just have to, if it was a policy question on some neutral topic, where I could just give an answer and the crowd was, they'd start booing a little bit if they disagreed, if I gave, some they disagreed with. But if it was anything on Obamacare, ACA, I said, look, you can differ on opinions, but you can't differ on the facts, right? the Obamacare system as a whole is broken, right? Humana and the biggie insurance companies last week announced they're leaving. I said there is no insurance market, right? In the Obamacare market, there's no provider in many counties,
right?
And then just total eruption, and you can't finish the question. So people say they want a town hall, so you do a town hall, but then you can't have the back and forth, right? And if it would have been open mic and I would have given the mic, I don't think I ever would have seen the mic back once a night.
All right, so you mentioned a couple things about the news coverage, and let's get to the story yesterday in the Richmond Times-Dispatch by Patrick Wilson, because you kind of called him out on Monday for the piece you did on Sunday evening. Basically, you just didn't think that was a fair piece. Now he had a piece that came out 9 hours ago. Representative Brat cheered, at times applauded during lively town hall Blackstone. Do you think Wilson did a better job this time than you thought he did on Sunday?
Much more fair. And the only thing they're missing, I interviewed, I had 10 cameras in my face after the meeting, and the press said, well, there seems to be a disconnect between what you said and the people who were booing you. And I said, well, of course there is, right? The country is very divided on the politics. And so they said, well, who's telling the truth? And I said, well, that's your job. I said, the failure of the press, right? Have you had any columns explaining, and you know just as well as I do, the Republican plans, right? The Price plan, the Rand Paul plan. Have you run stories on this to educate the people about what policies are available? Because all of them have a 2-year transition plan. We're not going to pull the rug out from anybody. They all have pre-existing coverage provisions. They all have kind of a safety net provision to them. And so I said, you have to adjudicate and help educate the average person out there, adjudicate between who's telling the truth and who's just doing politics, right? And so one hint in politics is when someone tries to give their position in public and they get booed down before they finish a sentence, then you got a problem. And the other evidence, the press asked me last night, this is similar to the Tea Party, right? So, what comes around goes around, or whatever the phrase is. And I said, no, it's not at all. I said, if you recall, the Tea Party was very focused on fiscal issues, right? Taxed enough already. And it was over half the energy was on Republicans. My own race, right? I beat the majority leader in Congress in my own party over the fiscal position. And so it's a huge difference, right? What we're seeing now, that the organized groups, there's 3 of them, Indivisible, and then Resist, and then this OFA coming out of Obama. And past Democrat staffers are running it. And it's full of anger, and the manuals all say how to take over the microphone in a town hall, how to shut down, and how to disrupt. So the goal is to disrupt the Trump agenda. Which I agree with. I don't agree with Trump on everything. On some of the fiscal issues, I'm probably going to have issues. But for the most part, the big 3, right? Obamacare repeal, replace, regulatory reform to get businesses moving, small business especially, and the economy and jobs, I'm all on board. And then the tax proposal, we got to do that. Lower the corporate rate so we're competitive globally. And so I'm on board. But everybody, not everybody, 2/3 of the room last night was just opposed to that Trump agenda. And so I asked the 10 cameras who are, overwhelmingly more liberal in their politics in the news, I said, can you tell me the Democratic agenda right now? I said, I didn't think so. And I said, I'm dead serious. If you can tell me and help educate the American people where the choice is here, what is the Democratic agenda? And they don't have any, right? They're debating whether to have Keith Ellison run the party and who's going to be the standard bearer, Elizabeth Warren, but that's it. There is no policy agenda. They don't have a budget that balances in. Well, their
policy,
and that's
Dave. Their policy is to stop the Trump agenda and basically continue with President Obama's policies. I mean, that's basically what the agenda is.
Right. And that's it. I mean, that was the divide in the room, right? It was disrupt.
Right. I mean, that's a divide, and they lost, and so and they didn't expect to lose, so now they're upset. And the other thing they're upset by, in my view, Congressman Brat, Dr. Brat, is that I don't think anybody expected Trump to get in there and do exactly what he said he was going to do, because other than yourself and a few other people, that's not what politicians do, especially at that level. They say one thing, they get elected, And then the bureaucracy takes over. The media, they all want to go to the cocktail parties. They want the New York Times to say how wonderful they are. And so they move away from whatever promises that were made. Trump's not done that. So I think there's a real anxiety amongst a lot of these protesters that Trump is going to get stuff done. And he's got a Republican Congress and he's got a Republican Senate, and they're not going to be able to stop him. But as I said earlier, the objective of protests is to influence policy. And so if they're not going to change Dave Brat's policies and they're not going to change Donald Trump's policies, then it's just a fun evening out to engage, and that's it, because they're not going to get anything out of it, right?
Yeah.
That's the bottom line.
And you're left in a tough quandary, because I do want to talk to all of my constituents, but I want to talk to them, right, and have civil discourse. And so that was not an option last night, because the protesters were drowning out and ruining the opportunity for everyone else to take part in the democratic system. And the press doesn't report on that, right? So I guess I got to tell them that, right? I mean, that they almost wait for you to, feed them the narrative, because they can't see what's in front of their eyes. But the average American is being cut out of the conversation. We couldn't get to a lot of the questions because the loud people were drowning it out, and then you couldn't hear the people who wanted to hear my responses and hear what's going on. I laid out the agenda very clearly. I said, look, whether you agree with me or not, I took on my own side. I took on Wall Street. I took on leadership on both sides of the aisle. I said, you may agree with me on some of this stuff, so why don't you hear me out? And we had fun. I mean, the crowd, it was pretty rough, but we got through it, and I was trying to have as much fun as I could. So we made it, and I enjoyed parts of it, but it's just frustrating when all the press is constantly bombarding you for a town hall so you can communicate, and then there's not an opportunity for communication, and the press doesn't say it. They say, Brat looked flustered, right, in answering a question when 50 people are standing up in their chairs howling at you. Well, it's like, okay, that's great reporting. So, I mean, it is kind of humorous.
All right, so what is it? It seems like you thought Politico was fair and Patrick Wilson of the Richmond Times-Dispatch was fair, but you opened the conversation by saying you thought that Jenna Portnoy of the Washington Post, her account you called fake news, or just basically not even reporting. You said it was just her opinion in there. You want to comment on that?
And just hits from constituents who give hits, right? But no objective analysis of what the context is, no facts on Obamacare, no analysis of who had it right? And so it's just a constant hit piece on me from beginning to end. And it's like I didn't have anything right, I guess. It is fake news, and all you got to do is go to the back of the New York Times or the Washington Post and just read all the op-eds. Right, the papers are just completely biased. I mean, 9 out of 10 are anti-Trump screeds in the opinion sections, the editorial sections, etc. And unfortunately, now that's spilled over into the entire paper. And so, I think everybody knows that now, right? That's why people are going to alternative news sources.
Well,
are going down.
Look, I was in the newspaper business a long time, so I can speak to this with authority in the major daily newspaper business. It sounds from what you're saying that you thought I was not there, so I have to just take your word, and I haven't seen the video yet because it isn't up. But it sounds like what you're saying is that the piece by Jennifer Portnoy in the Washington Post was basically an opinion piece, or what you would call an op-ed or an editorial, which it has to be an editorial writer. I mean, that you put your opinion in there, but that's what it said. This is the opinion of the paper. Or if you did a column, and it would say, it'd have your picture there, John Fredericks column, and it would be your opinion. When you do news, and if it doesn't say news analysis, then people are expecting straight up reporting. Here's what happened. Here's what was said. Here's both sides.
Yeah,
if you don't do that,
listening out there, there's a great research project to be had here, right? Go just do the statistics on the Washington Post, New York Times, Richmond Times-Dispatch, all the papers around here, and find out how many of their folks voted for Trump, right? That are writers for the newspaper and opinion writers. And so roughly half the country is Hillary, half is Trump, and so fair is fair. And so I mean, the funny thing you'll find, it'll be just like a liberal faculty in higher ed, right? It'll be 90% Democrat and maybe 99. Right?
99.
Trump voters that needs to be
the,
understood and analyzed.
The only major daily newspaper in the country who in their editorial endorsed Donald Trump was the Las Vegas Review and News, which is owned by Sheldon Adelson, right? Now, there were many little papers that did that, but the only one that endorsed Trump was the one that was purchased by one of Trump's friends, Sheldon Adelman. So and I'm talking about every major daily newspaper in the country,
right?
Which would be circulation over like 80,000.
99.9% bias, right?
99.9%.
And so then they act like they're doing objective news, and that can't plausibly be the case, right? And so some undergrads need to start studying this and reporting on that. That's a major story, and so someone needs to, go interview the news people. The news people get away with doing hit pieces. Go interview the news people and do a news story on the news people.
Really now what's happened is people in news in a lot of papers, especially medium-sized papers, the lines have been blurred. I mean, when I was at the Daily Press, I can just tell you this quick story and I'll take off, Dave Brat. When I was at the Daily Press in Newport News, a Tribune company, when they shipped me in there from Atlanta, I sit down in my first editorial meeting, and in my meeting is the editor of news. She's in the meeting. And I'm like, I thought she was in the wrong meeting, or I was in the wrong meeting. And I'm like, Marissa, am I in the wrong meeting? And she's like, no, this is your weekly editorial meeting. This was my meeting. And I got the editor of news in there. And I'm from the old school. I'm like, I don't talk to news. Okay. If you got something you want to tell me, I'll read it in the paper, or you can talk to me offline, but I don't have a public meeting and talk about what we're going to do editorial with people in news. That's just not the way it's done.
Right.
But see, look, I got fired from that job. So for that reason, well, because I believe that the vision, I don't really care what they're reporting on that day. That has nothing to do with me. And I don't even want their opinion. Shouldn't even be involved in it. Go cover your stories. I'll do what I do. But that's where this thing has gotten now muddied. I'm out of time. I want to thank Congressman Dave Brat for being with us, Dave. Thanks for that input. You're certainly the most accessible congressman in Virginia, no doubt. Thank you so much. And for more information, go to DaveBrat.com. DaveBrat.com.